In this video I'll be showing you this beautiful church, plus I'm going to be trying my hand at a little bit of architectural photography. Churches in particular have been a bit of a kindling interest of mine over the past few years as I've driven around the UK trying to seek out landscapes and waterfalls to photograph. I've noticed the subtle differences between different rural churches, and more I'm becoming more interested in church architecture, so this might be a bit of a photography project going forward. There's actually two public points of access to this church. There's the main gate, which is on the opposite side of the gate over here, and we've got this very scenic pedestrian access point, which I'm currently heading through now. We are straight into the back of the graveyard here, and it's a very well kept graveyard, I must admit, very tidy. So looking at the church itself, this composition here, just glancing from this perspective, looks like a good possibility. It really does get the church quite well framed by the trees. My only worry is that there's an ornament about here, this cross, that sort of obstructs the tower a bit. But first impressions are that that could work quite well as an image. Headstone here looks very cool, very ornate. In loving memory of Caroline Salisbury. With the detail in the carving there. Another great looking headstone. It's fairly flat, but there's still quite a bit of detail here in the top, and I'm really liking how the flowers just surround it, and it just really adds something extra to this final resting place of Herbert Harrison, who died January 1901, aged 79 years. Now that's not a bad innings for someone that died in 1901, I have to admit. Continuing round to the more shaded part of the graveyard now, and sadly there's a lot of graves here which are very much in disrepair. Located in the small South Derbyshire village of Boylestone, this is St John's the Baptist Church. It's an historic Grade 2 listed building. It was first built in the 14th century, and it was restored by Henry Dewsbury back in the mid-1800s after it fell into disrepair. I suspect as we open this netted door here, there'll be a much grander door waiting for us at the church entrance. So as we come here, we've got this main entrance, and just looking at the top here, you might be able to hear from quiet the clock above me ticking away. And how's that for timing? So as we enter the church, we've got this inscription above the doorway which says this is none other but the house of God. Let's continue through here. We've got this door, which, as I suspected, looks much better than that netting on the front. An absolutely beautiful door, this. Proper solid oak, and I imagine it's been here many years. And just behind the door on the wall, interestingly, we've got a scythe here, which I suppose represents the rural community in which this church is positioned in. This is going to be a real test for the low light of my new vlogging camera as we walk around this church. There's a little bit of stained glass windows at the top there. The bottoms are plain, but there's a nice little bit of colour in the two at the top. I think they both say A and N, or whether they're symbols or not, I don't know. Just turn around and look at the church from the back, and it's an interesting configuration, this church. It comes down in like an L shape rather than a long traditional church. So we've got this side here where we came in through the entrance, and it sort of meets a dead end here at the font. It continues up that way. I do love a nice stained glass window, although there don't seem to be too many, sadly, in this church, although there are a couple up at this top end here. That looks very old. Beautiful stained glass window there, looking very nice. I can see by it's sort of like a yellowy tobacco look. It does look very old, very ancient, but very cool nonetheless. And we've got the main stained glass window here. It looks very traditional. It's a type of stained glass window you'd expect to see in most churches, but that doesn't detract from the quality and the historical value of that window. Absolutely stunning. Just at the side here, we've got another stained glass window, a little bit more basic in appearance with just solid colours, not as much detail as the other stained glass window, but still fantastic nonetheless. And next to that one, we've got this one here, which again looks very intricate and looks very old. As we continue round back to the sort of L corner of the church, we've got a very sort of small organ here. Churches, we always expect to see a grand organ, especially in English churches, but this one's looking fairly small, but I suppose that's to be expected in a small village such as this. Really liking this end of the church with these inscriptions on the wall here. As we're heading back out of the door, we've got a visitor's book just here, and interestingly we've got a map of the graveyard which details all of the names and links them up with the graves in the graveyard outside. Very cool. So typically, while we've been walking around in the church, the weather has changed and it's now raining. Hopefully it's just a passing shower and I can get the image of this church in the bag. What I've opted for is to go to the first location where I saw that initial composition when I walked into the graveyard at the back of the church, as I really quite like the perspective from this angle. My main concern though, you remember when we walked into the graveyard, was the ornate cross on the end of the roof, and that sort of blocking the tower when taking an image from this angle. So what I've decided to do is that I've moved across a little bit just to alter the composition, change the perspective. Let me just get this gimbal right. And you can see the end of the church roof here is now moved away from the tower. Now, frustratingly, this does mean that my composition is going to be a lot more crowded. It's going to be framed by the trees. We're going to be getting this buddleia here in at the side, and there's going to be quite a few graves. It's going to be a busy image, but I think it's going to work. So, as I suspected, on location the final image is looking rather messy and very crowded. The church does have a bit of a pop to it, but I feel my framing here has become more of a feature than the church itself. I'm also not really a fan of that sky, if I'm honest. But with all that said, this is no waterfall, and for me this is a whole new area of photography, so I guess I should not be so harsh on myself in this instance. I'm planning on visiting lots more churches in the near future and to put more practice in at this type of photography. So if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing.